Well, I woke up this morning to a couple of surprises, and some of them good, some of them really not that good at all. First off, it is really cold out there. There's no way I'm going to get any work done out in the garage today. I had planned on, the original plan was I was going to polish the side of the frame. Only one side of this has been repolished, and or get the front wheel removed and get it downstairs for painting. Well, that didn't work out even a little bit, because Karen told me we have very limited time today because of family stuff that has to be done, so I have to resequence the whole day. That I thought I had a plan, and I really don't. I got to make a new plan. But the good news is, in 10-15 minutes I'll have the ice chopped, battery chargers flipped, and I'll be drinking coffee inside. And polishing the rest of that frame will just have to wait. And we had a little bit of snowfall overnight, but the snow is not the problem. The problem is it's been hovering in the low single digits. Now, for the ice on a pond to be this invasive that all I have is about a pizza pie size hole, it means I have to chop this. I'll be out here for 10 minutes or so, and this is really not a lot of fun. This is not the best pond day of the year. So right now, the real feel out there is -11. Current conditions in Wendy's garage. I think we'll stay in a cellar for 2 hours. So as I always say over and over and over again, I never want my life to become Groundhog Day with 2 days in a row the same. I like every day to be different if possible. Well, today's going to be different. And because of good sequencing now, basically all the paintwork is done. Maybe for some detail that I haven't thought of, and thank God, when it's 3 degrees outside, really not going to be fun holding that spray gun, and the paint really isn't going to dry the way it should. But there's always always a bunch of little details. Now, one of the little details was to get the inside of this fairing painted. That worked out great. I don't think that could have gone any better. And I took the bar off. I'm going to try to mount the windshield up today. These are the little projects that I can work on when it's 3 degrees. Now, I also could take another project, and I've made a little list of things I can do, because we have this weather for the next 3 days. Basically being outside weather would be a good way to put it. But Luciano is supposed to come over in the next day or so. We're waiting to see if the seat is going to fit on the RD. And he's got some custom shocks for me to look at, among other things. But trying to plan this out so I have something really appropriate today, because when it's a short day, I don't like to start any big job and then be in the middle of it, but I do have a lot of little stuff I can get out of the way today. Now, these are 2 little parts that actually they're mirror block-offs that I made, and what I want to do, of course, I want to show, actually it's something I could do today on camera. I wanted to clean them up, rejuvenate them, get rid of any little scratches, any little things that are in here, and do the final polish. And then there might be some other little parts while I have the polishing equipment out. And that might be an interesting thing to do, because I only have about 2 hours here, but that will be some good information we can share. Now, being able to buff aluminum parts if you're doing a restoration is a very handy skill, and this is one of the handiest tools of all. It's a Harbor Freight, of course, what else? An 8-inch bench grinder buffer. You can put any combination of wire, wheels, stones, but the biggest thing I use it for, and the reason it's a buffer, not a grinder, when the wheel is close to the motor, well, it's hard to get parts in there when you want to buff them. So what happens on a buffer, there's an extended side, so you can get parts that have odd shapes in there. So the first thing, if you don't mount the wheel on that side, you'll cut down your options of what you're able to buff. But having this tool, I think these were about 60 bucks with the coupon, of course, and then there's always the 4th of July sale or whatever that they send you the 25% coupon. But anyway, this is one of the things that I use in the shop on a regular basis. That is also what I call the basics. An old candle that's just ordinary wax. There's nothing special about it. I actually got 2 of them. This one's pretty well used. if you want to do relatively easy way to buff aluminum. Now, any number of polishes. Harbor Freight sells 6 different kinds. They all work on various materials. They're all under $5 each. So my suggestion is, if you're going to do any serious buffing, just buy one of each, and then you're set for life. Now, these sticks are the commercial equivalent. This is like homeowner stuff. This is commercial, but it's the same material. It's just that they make this in bigger sizes, more convenient for buffing. Now, here's the trick of tricks: is you buy a if you're going to really buff a lot, like I'm going to buff that frame, well, or anything, you need some material. Usually, but not always, usually you can tell by the color, and I'll just line some of these up, and but there's always exceptions to the rule. Now, see, the blue is made for, and it'll tell you right on here, for gold and silver and die cast items. Well, sometimes you do that and you try that on a certain grade of aluminum or a casting or something, and it works fine. But anyway, the one compound that works on, Red Rouge works on everything all the time. Steel, aluminum, I've found it to be very handy. So, but here's my point: you can buy as much stuff as you want. It's not the buying of the material that matters. Some wax, some various kinds of compound, because what we usually do is I start with the roughest compound, which is usually black. The rouge, the red, is usually the medium, usually but not always. There's always some exceptions to the rule. And white is always the finest to put the final polish. But then I find sometimes the blue gets a final shine, and you never know, because every grade of aluminum, this is good information for people that may not have ever worked in a machine shop. Aluminum comes in grades, and it doesn't all polish the same, it doesn't all sand the same, it doesn't all machine the same. So this is my basic 101 for buffing. You need a $60 buffer and probably a pad, which is $5, and probably a selection of this material for under $100. You could be in the buffing business, and then for the rest of your life you can buff your wife's jewelry, your belt buckles, your gold teeth, anything that needs to be buffed. Now, because we're trying to share information, this is what happens to all my old motorcycle riding gloves. You really need heavy-duty gloves. Here's the reason why: they wear out on the fingertips from buffing a lot of material. And you can tell, look at that fingertip. You can tell. You know, now this is really funny. I think it's funny anyway. I hope this doesn't offend anybody. I know people, I've been to their shop, and when I go to their shop, it's absolutely like a hospital ward, and everything is polished, all the tools are lined up, and oh, everything matches, matchy, the screwdrivers all match. But you know what? The bottom line is they don't have any gloves with the tips of the fingers missing. So I always think of it as, in fact, let me just show this. I always think the tool I want to have is this screwdriver. This screwdriver has done a lot of work. This screwdriver is like me. This is the Windy of screwdrivers. Look at these screwdrivers. Look at the tools this guy has. I know you're impressed. Try not to be so overwhelmed. But we never throw our old gloves away. When they're good enough to give somebody, we like to give them to newer people. They try to get them motivated, or at least not that they don't wear Home Depot gloves. But when they're really ratty, you use them for buffing. So that's another little tip. Now, we're not going to go into it today, but I will in the near future. I'll make a separate video on this part of it. All these little grinders and fiber sanders and everything, and you can see what I have. And this is not a let's show off, but I do have a lot of stuff, and the reason is because I've loved doing this for basically my whole life. Now, when I was a teenager, and I was just talking to Luciano about this the other day, and back in the 60s, and I had motorcycles that were rusty, and the first thing I wanted to do was get rid of the rust and then polish them. And the only polish I even knew about was DuPont red compound and DuPont white, and I'd go out there for hours with towels. And nowadays, with all these tools, I just want to remind Vince, if he watches this video, I bought this tool to do his BMW wheels. Never done his wheels. We've got all of these things. They're basically so you can restore parts conveniently, easily, without spending a fortune. And it becomes a passion. And once it's a passion, anything is possible. And it was a common saying I've heard several people say, and Ray Straub is the one I remember saying it the most, that if there's something in life you want and you don't have it, it probably means you don't want it bad enough. Well, all my life, and I'll confess, as a kid in the 60s with rusty motorcycles and bicycles with two wheels that didn't match, I wanted to have this motorcycle that I'm working on right now. I wanted to have a bike that was customized, it was mine. I designed the paint job, I did the paint job, I polished the aluminum, I did blah, 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 and everybody would think when they saw it, they'd say, wow, that guy's a cool guy. Well, the only part of this whole thing that's missing is I haven't heard, even my wife doesn't think I'm a cool guy. So if you think I'm a cool guy, you're in a big minority. Let's get buffing. So the first part of this, I always do a test, and to see how this is going to play out. 2500 sandpaper is a good place to start. Not a whole lot different than sanding paint ready for polishing. Not a whole lot different. So again, the test is, and it's a common thing I do, whether it's paint or polishing. I want to test every piece of aluminum that you're going to look at, and where are the flaws. This is scratched. So I want to take what it probably looks on a video to be nice shiny aluminum, but it really isn't. There's a lot of little defects, and again, we're working on the fluorescent lighting, so we see defects that you're never going to see in the either on the regular lights, or then in the worst of all worlds is under sunlight. Sunlight is, even I look good under sunlight. Well, wait a minute, let's not get carried away. Anyway, I wanted to show this. This is supposed to be a great trick. I have tried it and found it to be, it's a trick, but it's not a great trick. It's not something that to be all end all. I sanded the 2500 paper, a little bit of Dove in the water, a little bit of soap, Dawn or whatever. I sanded in one direction, and I sanded in exactly a 90-degree direction. Now, supposedly what that does, it makes little waffles that make the buffing go a lot smoother. When I've done it, I've said, I don't know. So, but it doesn't hurt anything. So here's what I wanted to show before we do anything, if possible. Let's see if I can get this on focus here. We started with a part that looked pretty shiny, but it had a lot of flaws. I've got sanding scratches. Now it's always about the sand. Polishing is always about sanding scratches. So in a perfect world, you'd start with, say, 600, then 1,000, then 1,500, 2,000. But at some point in time, each one you take the sanding scratches off. So the sanding scratches are this deep, then they're this deep, they're this deep. At some point, 2,500, there's almost no sanding scratches. Then that makes the time you have to spend on the polishing wheel that much less. Now this is really no different than what we do with the paint, buffing, because polishing and buffing are the same. But if I wanted to show a good example, see right up here, there's a moon crater. Now you could polish, I can go to the polishing wheel and I'll be there for an hour to polish that moon crater out. And then it'll be like this, where if I take, this is the soft sanding stick, same one, it's really a nail file. And what I want to do, it's easier if I do it from this side because I'm not left-handed. If I use this, and this one came from Harmon Face Values. I don't know where these things appear in my shop. I steal them from Karen. But anyway, if I work that moon crater, because these parts are going to be right up on top of the fairing, and I don't want to see any flaws in it. And the first thing of, if you have the basic knowledge of what a diamond, why does a diamond look so beautiful? Because it's so hard, it takes a shine. It takes a flat cut. If you look at a diamond under a microscope, it's perfectly flat. That's when they cut it. And it takes the shine. They polish it and it looks beautiful. Well, aluminum, steel, brass, anything is exactly the same. Now, I'm going to do the thing, even though I don't think it's really going to make any difference here, back and forth, because this is such a small part anyway. But now you can see, if you look at this part real close, and I'm doing it without a camera cut, that that moon crater is almost nothing. It's down to nothing. So what it means is I'm going to take some more time, take a little more time, using that, let's call it the moon crater remover. And this is, by the way, is a great trick. Worth watching the whole video, just if you haven't seen that. And I want that part to be perfectly flat before I ever even take this anywhere near the buffing wheel. So now basically we have all the moon craters out. The part is flat. Now you can always do this test, and this is, again, is ordinary SOS. I'm going to hold one side and just run this around the edge, because you really do see the edges. Whenever you polish something, you don't realize it, but the edge shows a lot of the light that's reflecting. So I want that radius around the edge to be real nice. Even though this is one little tiny part, it's a part I'm going to see. It's like having a gold tooth in the middle of your mouth. You better buff it out. But anyway, sharing this information, I mean, and that's obviously the goal. I was watching last night on YouTube a guy make a table that he was a one-horse, kind of like I am, a one-windy shop, and he made the most beautiful table out of black walnut that I've ever seen. And he put dye in the epoxy, and oh my God, it's beautiful. But anyway, what I like is that we have YouTube to share these things with, because without it, I'm not so sure. I'd never figure out how to do it anyway, but let me show this up close. Now you can see a little bit more. It gets, for sure, a little bit shinier. Not going to be like a buffed out finish, but now that part of it is ready to buff. What we're going to do, we're going to put a little bit of wax on the wheel, just a little bit of the red rouge, and take our part that's been 2500 sanded, and let me just take this 1 second. It gets a little awkward doing this, but I think if you see it once, it'll work. Ordinary pad from Harbor Freight, nothing special. Nothing industrial. The red rouge always is a good place to start. The wax helps it stay on the wheel. And of course you can use up those old MotoGP gloves that you have. You don't want to put the part here, it's going to do that. You don't want to be at the bottom, it's going to, you want to be right about at 3 o'clock. And in my own personal case, I don't want to press down so hard that I slow the motor down. It just makes it, let the wheel do the work. As that wheel slows down, you're not doing it. You're really not going any faster than if you just let it. At least I think so. And you never want to do this barehanded. This black aluminum compound that gets under your fingernails and skin, and you'll look homeless by the time you're done. Now, by now, at the more time you take, and by the way, softer aluminum, like the aluminum you would buy at Lowe's, polishes up beautifully, but it scratches easily, so you got to be very delicate with it. But this is the idea now that I've got this polish on it. This is just ordinary flits. I want to have a little protection on it also. So I'd hate to have to 6 months from now have to repolish this. Not to repolish it, but the flits does protect it. I know that, and it in a way, I think. See, when you see it turning black, what you've done is combine material of aluminum you've taken off and mixed it with the compound. You got to find a clean spot on the rag. Let's see if we can show this. Oh, I'm not really sure because of the lighting in here. If you can see, that really did come out pretty nice. And of course, out in the sunlight, it'll be twice as bright. Now I just wanted to show this. This is not really the way to do this, my first choice, but I always have the option of, the reason I like to do it this way, I can control the speed. Now the reason, I'm just going to use this as an example, but sometimes I'm doing jewelry for Karen or something. Now see, I can control the speed, and this is a soft sponge with some flits on it, and I can control the speed. Now she has a lot of stuff that I do this from time to time, and it really works well, but being able to control the speed, the problem with, and you know, I never thought of something, I wonder if that grinder, if I could put a speed controller, you know, a foot pedal. I actually have an extra foot pedal for the Fordham tool. You see, now if I want to go fast with this, and actually, to be honest about this, what I did at one time, I had an old drill and it had a wobbly shaft, and I put it in the vise and put C-clamps around, not C-clamps, hose clamps, big hose clamps, and I was using that for buffing when I had small parts, because that big wheel, a small part like this is hard to hold in the wheel. Now, let me get a rig. But no matter what, once you buff the part, you want to protect it. I do anyway with some flits, so now hopefully I won't have to rebuff this for quite a while. And even one little part like this, it's a major thing for me to, every time I get a part like this done, I'm just really happy that, yeah, you can always catch the light in it when that's out in the sunlight. Every little thing, it's going to make, just to me, the bike easier to maintain too. So this next little thing I wanted to show, I'm going to use 1200 sandpaper and show how, this is how I would get rid of a big gouge or a big scratch that's in an aluminum part. Now this part has some serious scratches and serious gouges. What would happen if I use 2500, I'm basically going to be here all day. So the 1200 sandpaper is going to leave deeper scratches, but in the overall picture of doing this, it's going to be an improvement. I'll get the scratches out, I'll get the part flat, then I'll sand it with 2500, then steel wool, and then buff it. Now there's one thing I've been waiting to do. I'm not going to do it right now, but I always have anticipated, the one part of the FZR that I wanted to polish more than anything was the clutch cover, because you see half of it and then kind of half of it goes behind the fairing, and it's really scuffed up and it's painted and paint is missing in spots. But I was waiting for this bike. I've been waiting for 10 years. Well, not 10 years, but a long time. So it would need a clutch and I'd have the part off. But I think maybe the next time I drain the oil and do an oil change, I will take that cover off, put a new gasket on it, because polishing that up will be a real nice match to the frame. Now let me just show. And check this out, because this is a part that a lot of people, you get frustrated, you start polishing something, and the moon crater won't go away. You can see right up here, there's several little moon craters. Well, it's going to take time with 1200 sandpaper. I'm just going to have to work on that with the nail file or with some kind of a sanding block until I get that out. Basically now that's been sanded, the moon craters are gone with our little sanding tool, and what we're left with now if I were to buff this, I'm going to find out, and that's going to take a long time to buff this out because 1200 sandpaper leaves very deep scratches. So rather than do that, I'm going to take some 2500 sandpaper, do the same thing I just did, sand it with the stick, sand it by hand, keep it good and wet, keep it flushed out, and get this as smooth as I can. And that'll make the buffing part of it and the rest of this just go very quickly. This is a part that needs a lot of work. The other one went very quickly, so I wanted to show both of them on the video. Now look at the shine on that. And very soon that's going to have the same shine. It's always good to This was a very easy part, not a lot of flaws, a few moon craters. This one had some deep scratches. The 1200 took most of it out, the 2500 the rest. This is ready for some, I could guess, the steel wool next. So the whole purpose of showing this is to show the whole concept that you start with actually the smoothest grit that'll get the defect out. In this case, the 1200 took it right out. I let it run in fast forward because basically you're maybe as bored as I am here. But anyway, I wanted to get, and Karen just told me something, that the kids, because of the terrible temperature, and we've got snow coming, more snow coming I should say, the kids have a half a day, so I basically have a very short time here. I was going to try to do the windshield today. That's not happening today, but Miles had asked me the last time he was here, and I thought I can kill two birds with one stone. He wanted to play up at the model railroad. He loves trains, of course. And every once in a while I do put a couple minutes of the model railroad on here. But we just did the wiring for that fairing. And if you think my wiring skills are limited or non-existent, I'm going to show a picture from underneath the train table of what my wiring... There are about 500 LEDs on that, and probably, oh my God, miles of wire. I was buying wire by the case. But I wanted to show this. Now what this will be, we're actually ready for buffing here. And it may take a little extra because there may still be some scratches in there when I'm done. But that should buff right up now. Anyway, that's some good polishing and buffing information, and as I said before, it's not a whole lot different. The paint, aluminum, we got a lot more aluminum parts, including that one side of the frame we want to repolish. I'll try to get that on a separate video, but because this was a unique day, we have to go get our grandson, and we're going to run some trains. Now this model railroad I made 21 years ago, and I didn't know much about wiring back then. I didn't learn a lot since then either. So I hope you enjoyed the video and share a minute or two of the model railroad. And thanks for watching. Since we were doing wiring, I wanted to... This is underneath my train layout that we're going to hang out with Miles and run trains. Beautiful wiring job. All right, take them up to 30. Take them up to 30, baby.
I had 32.
It's 30? Okay.
No, 32.
32? Take them up to 42. Take it up, Mr. Spock.
42.
If you ever knew how many wires are connecting this model railroad. This is in the attic of my house, for anybody who hasn't been here.
50.
50! That's enough now. I don't want the passengers complaining you're speeding. What are you at now, 55?
Huh?
Go to 65.
65.
You're at 70 now? Take them to 35. All right, you got it up to 40? All right. No more than 40 now. I don't want these passengers complaining. Okay, that's it. Okay, you got it. You take them to 50?
Don't take a picture.
He's at 60. Go to 65. Whoa! Whoa! You want to take him to 70? Take him to 70. No more than 70 now. No more than 70. Okay?
Let me put him on the outer loop.
Not right now. I don't want to do all the work. We're just trying to have fun. Whoa! Whoa! That's all you got. 70. No more than 70.